So what to upgrade first? Should you go pedals, wheels, or something else? I know in the future you'll want to upgrade, but sometimes you'll find that upgrading is not just about one thing. There are other things you need to keep in your mind. If you are with a very basic system, say a controller or a bungee wheel of sorts, the first upgrade you need to consider is a bundle that will have pedals, a wheelbase, and a steering wheel, something like a Logitech wheelbase or a Fanatec CSLDD bundle or a Trustmaster bundle or something like that. However, you need to keep in mind your physical space where you're going to race on. A few of the things I'm going to say might be irrelevant to you because you just want to do the bare minimum for the racing discipline you want to do. This means if you are already with some sim racing equipment and you want to do an upgrade of a wheelbase, for example, and you are standing on the desk, there's really no point getting a SimiCube Ultimate or a Fanatec DD1 or something like that if you're using on a desk. I mean, it's possible, there are mounting solutions for that, but it is definitely not optimal. Having said that, there are desks that can definitely take entry-level direct drives like the Fanatec CSLDD or the R5 or the Camus, and they were built in mind to be mounted on a desk as a solution, as a stopgap, because now they have options for that, and they have been replacing the Logitech wheelbases and the Trustmaster wheelbases. But desks generally, they're not a good place to race on, especially when you are considering upgrading. The same reasoning can be also used for entry-level pedals. These pedals can be used on the floor because they have very light rates for the springs, so no problem whatsoever. However, very few more expensive pedals have the usability to be used on the floor as something in mind. Even though they have rubber feet, it doesn't really mean they are optimal to use on the floor. I've found through my reviews that even a lot of these pedals with rubber feet, when you press them hard enough, the pedal set will topple over. The only pedal set that doesn't really work like that is the Logitech Pro. It was built with the usability on the floor in mind. Therefore, upgrading your pedals without a proper rig or something more stable is not the right course of action. But having said that, maybe there's a market there for pedal floor mounts. Having something more fixed like a wheel stand or a rig helps a lot with consistency, especially a rig. A wheel stand still works, but it's not as same as a rig. It allows you to have a much better braking performance as your braking will be more reliable. You won't be moving around in your chair. So that's another point. An upgrade that you can do to not move around is to get caster wheels for your chair. Still, in terms of consistency, it will be much better to have something fixed, because if you brake, there won't be any movement, longitudinal movement and lateral movement, so you can always hit your braking points and brake correctly. Therefore, first, you need to plan around the place you are going to race on, and because of this, a wheel stand, or especially the rig, is your most important priority, probably the most fluid, because it's also going to depend of your objectives and the space you have, and also the type of money you want to invest into sim racing. And because of that, choosing a rig or wheel stand will determine your choices in sim racing going forward. Going forward, also subscribe to the channel. Removing the rig or wheel stand out of the equation, but still keeping it in mind because it will determine what type of upgrades you're going to do. The first upgrade you need to do is better than entry-level pedals. Load cells will be the natural choice or the natural next step, because there's prices for everything from like €150 to sky is the limit. Load cells have a series of advantages. Most important of them all is that they read force, they do not read distance traveled on a pedal. That means you can train your muscle memory. Because it's all about muscle memory with load cell pedals, these pedals are basically the place where likely you're gonna lower your lap times the most. A couple of years ago, I've done a video comparing two different sets, a Logitech wheel and the DD1 set that I was using, and mixing and matching, and I found out that, well, it was on the pedals where you gain the most time. Between the wheelbases, really, there wasn't any time between them. There are also other advantages with load cells. They're extremely moddable. You can get springs or different elastomers to change on the brake rack, and because they read force and not distance, you can train your muscle memory to those different types of movements. Build quality also tends to be much better, and also in terms of reliability, the load cell is much more reliable than the potentiometer. And nowadays, Even the throttle and the clutch pedals are now done with Hall sensors and not potentiometers, so they'll be also more reliable. You have so many choices. You have stuff like the Trustmaster TLCMs, you have mid-range pedals like the ones I'm using on my sim rig, the Fanatec CSL Elite V2s. You have Hoisingveld Sprints, Hoisingveld Ultimates, IMSIM Talentos, and then you have other things like hydraulic or pneumatic pedals. Well, there's really a choice there in terms of budgets. There's likely something for you. I'm actually recording a video right now with pedals from cheap to more expensive to see what's the time difference between them, so subscribe to keep up to date. Next will be the wheelbases. As you can probably understand, lower in my priority list than pedals and sim rigs, because you are not gaining any sort of stability on the way you're playing or a performance in terms of lap times compared to sim rigs or pedals. They're wonderful to have, they're a lot of fun, you can do a lot of stuff with it, but in terms of performance, at least for me, and you might have another opinion, they'll be lower in my priority list. As of this moment, if you want to do an upgrade for your wheelbase, I don't really recommend belt-driven wheels or gear-driven wheels for an upgrade unless it's your last option. I'm saying this because the prices of entry-level direct drives have dropped so much. Stuff like the Fanatec CSL DD, once again the R5 or Camus C5, you are looking at the same price in the bundle as the Logitech T300RS or the TGT 1 and 2 or even the G923 had like 3 or 4 years ago. So it doesn't really make sense to get a new bundle or buying something new that is a belt wheel or a gears driven wheel. If it's secondhand and if you find a very good deal, go for it. Once again, better steering wheel, especially direct drives. They are fantastic. They have more finesse. They will give you more information through the wheel. They're faster to turn and faster especially to react to whatever is happening on the track. This gives you important information for your driving. However, in terms of outright performance, as you get used to the force feedback of other wheels, when you put them side to side, you don't gain as much lap time as you do when you go for a load cell pedal. Regardless, if you upgrade, I would urge you to consider a wheelbase with a quick release system because it will augment your experience, as it will give you a plethora of choices and will have something that is more for you. If you race ovals or if you race GTs, there will be likely a steering wheel that will suit your needs. Now, something that will be likely controversial that I'm going to say, in terms of upgrading to triples or ultra wides, I always consider this to be a lower priority than doing everything else first. And I'm saying this because for me, at least in my opinion, it is more important to increase the quality of your peripherals than it is to increase the complexity with adding more equipment to your rig. This, in terms of complexity, also works for everything else if you want to add the D-box or movement or whatever. First, the basics, then you start to expand what you have on the sim racing rig. But of course, if you have other priorities, it's your rig, it's your choices. Upgrading also works in cycles. You can go to subreddit, sim racing subreddit, to check out the upgrades of certain users. They start on a desk, they move to a wheel stand, they have a rig, then a bigger rig with all the bells and whistles. It's an interesting process and a very expensive one. Because it works in cycles, after the first cycle, your priorities might change and this list might not make a whole lot of sense, especially if you buy select pedals or select wheelbases that will last you for a long time, and then you can focus yourself into another part of your sim racing experience. You can add triples after that, whatever you need. With sim racing, it's never an investment, it's always an expense. So when you spend money, make sure that you're spending just once, so you're not going to spend it again and again and again, having something that is repeated and you just waste your time and waste your money. But most importantly, you should be grounded while doing this upgrade. It's very easy to lose the plot, it's very easy to overspend on this. So essentially for me, rig, load cell pedals, wheelbase, and then everything else. These are my opinions, but I want to hear yours. What is for you the most important thing to upgrade and what should be first? I want to thank all the channel members, and also if you want to check out how to choose sim racing equipment, press this video on this side.